It is my great honor to welcome to the show Wouter Kusters, philosopher, author, and linguist. So, Wouter, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm fine. It was a nice day here in the Netherlands where I live.
The land of Gouda, as you told me. Land of Gouda cheese?
Yes,
Yes.
in fact, I work in, as we Dutchies call it, Gouda.
Gouda.
It is like gold A. So that's the etymology. Gold
Interest.
A.
Gold. Ah, okay. Well, I will have to next time I'm ordering it at the sort of grocery, I'll be sure to give it the Dutch spin. So yeah, it is. It's wonderful as we've talked. It's wonderful to have you on the show. We start each show the same way because it sort of frames where we're going in an interesting way, and we're literally in the shadow of Harvard Divinity School across the street, so have to
Yes, yes, that's
wriggle the religion in here. So, what was your exposure like to religion growing up? Were you raised in a church? Were you raised atheist? Where did you fall on that spectrum?
I was raised not really atheist, but more agnostician. Like atheist is a real denial of theism, I would say. But I was raised just in at school, at secondary school, and at university. That the default thing to believe was not to believe, and those who believed were kind of special guys who got it from their family or
Mm,
who had some ideas which they developed into church. So mainly atheist, but not that explicitly.
I see.
Yeah. And in my family, there have been also some religious thinkers, so to say.
Oh, really? Like sort of pastors and
Yeah,
ministers?
well, no, well, my first interest in philosophy was when I was at secondary school, and I saw those two. Perhaps you know them. Well, it's from a German author, Storik, History of Philosophy.
Okay.
That was the standard about 50 years ago in European philosophy as a kind of introduction. It's very compact. And I saw those two books at my grandfather, and he did have a kind of religious ring around him, but not explicitly. It was just an intellectual culture of thinking, experiencing, and well, I think quite in that sense mainstream in Western Europe. I think it's different in the US, but in Netherlands, Scandinavia, Germany, with respect to religion, I think it is quite similar.
Interesting. Yes, for the most part, the US, for a long time, maybe it's changing over the last 20 years or so, has been spared a lot of the secularization and agnosticism. Now it's boomed over the last, again, 20, 30 years.
Hmm.
So we're catching up with the world in certain ways.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Uh, so you started reading philosophy in high school, as you say, but you did
Yes.
not end up studying philosophy right away in college. You studied linguistics.
No.
What drew you into the world
Yes.
of the
Yes.
study of language?
Yes. Yes. Well, I was hesitating when I had to choose, I had to select a specific study. And I remember that I thought, well, philosophy is perhaps the most interesting thing to study because it is about all possible questions you can question about. But then I was 18 years old and I thought, well, with philosophy, you also have to read all those old canonical texts by Plato and Aristotle. I want to do something that is more catchy, that is more of today, so to say. I thought my strong motivation to enter linguistics was I thought when I learn the word, when I learn the structure, and when I learn how texts are built up, then I can discover what is beyond the text, what is the world is like without text. So I used linguistics as a kind of means for another end.
Mm.
And it was only later that I discovered that there are other methods to approach that so-called end or purpose, apart from studying linguistics,
Yeah. So,
like
uh,
the university of life, so to say, the experiential method into having friends and going to parties and using licit or illicit drugs a
mm,
bit and all those kind of things. Well, that's also also something we can do here on Earth, I think.
yeah, very much free to do so. And
Mm.
so, uh, one thing that I would have talked about in the introduction, but to bring up here, so you are the author of A Philosophy of Madness, and we're
Yes,
we're going to be getting into that.
yes,
But so your first experience of madness, if I remember right,
yes.
you were like 19,
20,
18.
19, 20, yes,
Yeah. So just as a way of sort of getting that ball rolling, when
yes.
in your first experience of psychosis, did you have any sort of, did it generate any sort of philosophical sort of explorations for you? Was it something that you thought through that way, or was it more something that you just needed to get out of? So how did you experience
No,
madness that
it's
first time?
um, I was a student in linguistics at that time. And I was taken to the hospital and I was hospitalized for about 2 or 3 months. And the experiences I had in that hospital were different from normal experiences. And I was in, well, 19, 20 at the time. And for me, that was a kind of break in my so-called career. But I just left it as it was, a break, and I went back into university career, the academic career, and I followed linguistics
Mhm.
much farther. I also did a PhD in linguistics, and all those years I had such a break in my life, a rupture or a crack, and for me it was not always when I look back at that period and I look back at those memories, it were not only memories of misery and not only memories of illness, also not.
Mhm.
But it was different from normal experience and from a normal use of language and from a normal perspective. It was all abnormal, so to say, or not normal. And I just left it in my brain somewhere
Mhm.
until the day came that a friend of mine said to me, well, always when have talked much after 3 or 4 beers, so to say, you are telling these stories about your episode in the psychiatric hospital. Why don't you write a book about it? Because what you say is so interesting and it
Mhm.
is so different from what the stigmatizing uh, way of looking at it is. Just yeah, write it down and
Mhm.
uh, tell it to other people why it is interesting, why it is fascinating, why it is drawing us towards that point. And so I did.
Mhm.
And then I wrote my first small book, Pure Waanzin, Pure Madness. Um, and to my surprise, it won the national Dutch contest in uh, philosophy books. And yeah, that
Yeah.
was great news. And but that was already in 2004,
Mhm.
2004. So it was smothering on a low fire for 17 or 18 years. And then
Mhm.
I came with that book. And then what I had done in that book was digging up the memories. and structuring the memories, my memories, but also scrutinizing and examining other autobiographies, but not only from a so-called first-person perspective, but also reports and stories about madness and about psychosis. So I gathered a lot of information from the inside and the outside at the same time, so to say, and I tried to weave a story. And I did in that book. The story was, the story was that in one kind of letter type were my memories. Then in a second kind of letter type was the so-called official report by the nurses and the doctors.
Mm.
And then a third layer of text was my attempt to philosophize and to weave the first person mad perspective through the third person descriptions. And that book was a success in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that success, and because I thought, well, this was only an attempt. It was literally an essay in French. That means an attempt. Ein Versuch auf Deutsch. It was only an attempt to describe madness that I thought, well, this was so interesting to do, and it was also nice to do. It was good to do. Just I felt at home when writing about this stuff, and it was not just working according to a plan on some outside subject. Then I decided to stop my academic career in linguistics. I had already a PhD and I was in kind of a postdoc position, and I stopped it. And I went back to school, so to say, and I went and I thought, well, now the time has come to do a real study of philosophy. And then I went through the Bachelor of Philosophy, the Master of Philosophy, and I read what was taught here in the Netherlands as all the classics of philosophy. And while all the time, while I was reading all those philosophers, they expose something, they show something. And at the back of my head was always the question, okay, we have this metaphysical system, or we have this kind of anthropological thoughts about what anthropos might be, or what the body-mind difference might be, etc. And in the back of my head, I had all the time, what does this philosopher, what are the implications for description of psychosis or madness?
Mm-hmm.
And then I did my master thesis, and now it was my bachelor thesis, and I had submitted my bachelor thesis, and I thought, well, I've written it down. I've written about the four possible views, four perspectives on time, and I gave it to my supervisor, Antoine Moy, a specialist psychoanalyst into Jacques Lacan. And with some other so-called triggering factors, I became psychotic again.
Yeah.
And then I was there in the hospital, and then people approached me, nurses approached me because they wanted to have a signature, because I had written the book, and now the author was present, so to say. Yeah. That is how it all started with my writing. Because only after that second episode, I started to write the text that has been translated into English, this Philosophy of Madness.
So thank you. There's a lot to unpack in there. So one of the first things, have you been in discussions for Pure Madness to be translated into English, or is that sort of on a back burner at this point?
I've shown it once to, I don't know his name anymore. But when you know a publisher who would like to have it, who would translate it into English and put it under copyright number, etc.,
Mhm.
then be my guest.
Yeah.
I'd love to have it in English.
Yeah, I mean, there's just this missing link for those of us who don't know Dutch. In
Yeah,
your
yeah.
thought, we appreciate the description, but as I understand it, you this is the beginnings of your sort of philosophical approach to madness.
Yes.
And uh, as you just reflected, you started to get into sort of phenomenological psychiatry at this point as well.
Well, in fact, in my Pure Madness book,
Hmm.
which was called Pure Madness, I did that more from a linguistic point
Mm.
of view, and I used Ferdinand de Saussure
Ah.
a lot. And I knew and I know him very well because in the history of linguistics, he's a main figure.
Mhm.
And in the history of philosophy, he is used to and transplanted into Jacques Lacan has used him, Levi Strauss has used him. So the Saussure is used in other contexts, but I used the Saussure to say something about this signifier signified relation within science, and I used it to show how signifier signified levels could switch over each other. And that's not yet the phenomenological approach,
Mhm.
because the phenomenological approach, um, I began that after having studied philosophy.
Ah.
It was more Saussurean, but also in that time I read Deleuze. In
Mhm.
the end, there are some indications that deterritorialization of Deleuze could very well be could have been applicable to becoming mad.
Yeah,
And well, I think that is indeed very apt, Deleuze, in this whole domain.
absolutely. So you're back, you're studying these philosophical texts very closely, as you're
Yes.
writing your bachelor's thesis, which, by the way, when reflecting to my master's students about, yes, this began as a bachelor's thesis, it blows all of their minds. But
Yes.
anyway, neither here nor there.
Uh,
The one of the things you reflect on quite a bit in a philosophy of madness is the ways in which these forms of thought, this disciplined form of thinking that we get in philosophy, is strongly resembles and can lead to similar places
yes.
as mad thinking. So the obvious question is, what were you reading at the time, as you were leading into 2007, your second hospitalization?
Yes.
What was it that had sort of like grabbed you and you started to reflect on thinking in that way?
Well, um, it it's a very good question because I also think that it influences each other.
Hmm.
Because when I would have been psychotic after 2007 in say 2014, perhaps it would be Alain Badiou all over the place because he has this systematic mathematician um, approach to which I also feel very much related. This
Mm.
playing with numbers. Then it would be Alain Badiou. But Alain Badiou was not in my picture when I wrote Philosophy of Madness. What was in my picture was I had indeed done these standard in Utrecht, at least the University of Utrecht standard traditional courses on Plotinus,
Hmm.
on German idealism, Hegel, Schelling, and quite a lot of Kant, Immanuel Kant, and some of the 20th century analytic philosophers. But what was gripping me was that I was also, I gave a summer school at somewhere at the International School for Philosophy, to be exact.
Hmm.
And that summer school was about Charles Taylor.
Mm.
Charles Taylor's Sources of the Self was, and I read Sources of the Self, and parts of what Taylor discusses in Sources of the Self, I've used that in. in the fourth part of a philosophy of madness, the notion of this the sacred versus the profane.
Hmm.
I came upon phrasing that notion via Charles Taylor. And then I also discovered, of course, Mystea, Eliade, and yeah, there's lots of literature. But
Yeah,
I left that literature aside because I wrote my own, so
yeah.
to say.
Although you have, I mean, the book is filled with these interlocutors, these sort of
Yes,
intellectual interlocutors, and
yes, it
so much
is.
of it is about dialoguing
Yes.
with them and putting things
Yes.
in side by side in perspective. So before jumping into the book itself, just curious. So you'd been studying philosophy, then you have the hospitalization. Are you starting your philosophy? Are you starting the book while you were in the hospital? Are you sort of thinking through it as you would as a
Yes.
philosopher at this point? Okay.
Yes, I remember so well that when in 2007 I was there at the corridor of the psychiatric award, um, and then I knew I was so convinced that everything I had written in Pure Madness was so utterly true that I I thought, well, I can write it again, but with much more sharpness, delicateness, much more colored. And then, so I was then already kind of philosophizing, but what I also say in the introduction to my book, in a very wild way,
Hmm.
not not that not that temporalized step by step by step, but in different changes of the mood and of the metrum and of the pitch. So chaotic philosophy it was.
Hmm. So interesting. Um, so as we turn into the book, so it's a dense and beautiful and sort of contagious 700-page book. I don't pretend that you're going to be able to give a book report on it. But before we sort of dive into how you work with particular thinkers and then
Mm-hmm.
especially the way in which you work with mysticism, because this is the part, well, the two parts, part two,
Yeah.
part three. Um, those of us who are scholars in that area have just been sharing this book back and forth because of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in Via Mystica Psychotica in part three.
Mm-hmm.
But first, for those who haven't read it, could you just give just general sort of introduction or encapsulation of the book?
Yes. Well, indeed, this notion of mysticism, whatever it may be, um, it came to me after that period in 2007 in the institution, but it was a notion that I thought when I was writing the book and I had set up part one. Well, part one is a kind of classical. There are the data, and here is the philosopher discussing those data. Part one is a bit more traditional. But I wanted to go further into those data while being a philosopher. So kind of merger between the description and the experience. And for that, I found all kinds of texts and thoughts within this tradition of mysticism. And while working on my book, I was reading quite a lot of mystics, but yeah, it would have been a much smaller book when I would throw all kinds of mysticism onto the same level. What I needed to express the florosity, the how florid, how flowery a psychosis can be in its richness and also in its nastiness. I needed distinctions between different kinds of mysticism.
Mhm.
So what I did in part two, the Via Mystica Psychotica, that's a kind of jump off from the normal terrain of philosophy and show that when we de-ixing, de-langualize, or de-imaginize, etc., when we cut all those binds to the earth and we flew towards the sky without there being a sun yet, like Icarus, but when we detach ourselves from our environment, that is a movement that could be called a mystical movement. And what I do in part three was differentiate between different kinds of mysticism, and this differentiation is four parts. Is in four parts: mysticism of the one, and then I use plotiness; mysticism of being, and then I used quite a lot of philosophers. I use Aldous Huxley there, among others, and then mysticism of infinity, and then I use Nicolaas von Cusa and also Henri Michaud and others also. And the mysticism of nothingness, and that's the fourth chapter of this third part on mysticism. So I have this number 4, which is playing a role in my book, and I consider it as a kind of mandala with four sides, a square, and on or like chessboard. There are A1, A8. H1 and H8. I hope that's the notation you use in the US, because I know
that's
English,
right. Yeah.
Okay, the English do it different.
Oh,
They
okay.
notate the chess different, but well, like a chessboard. And there are towers on every corner. And my way to bring content within this mysticism was to say, well, those 4 towers, I use the age-old metaphors of earth in part 1 of the book, of water, part 2 of the book, air, part 3 of the book, and fire, part 4 in the book. So those 4 elements correspond to the 4 parts, and in a way, these 4, this numbering of 4 is also the numbering of the one, the many, infinity, and nothingness. So that's the basic structure of the book. And to put another layer of structure, which is a kind of the secret of the book. The secret of the book is I have called it crystal. That is the thing when we see a pyramid, like in Egypt.
Yep.
There's also 4 corners, and there's kind of top of it, or a secret in the center of it. And that secret, I call it crystal. And crystal is also in my story the love I'm looking for, or the love that I've lost, etc. So it plays also on another level. It's also kind of detective novel where A3 becomes A4 by way of crystal.
So wonderful encapsulation. Thank you. And if the audience is not sort of jumping on to buy the book by now, I don't know what they're thinking. So there's a number of different directions to go here with this, but the first thing I wanted to talk about, so the choice to write in this phenomenology uses the term performative way, this way of not just describing the states or making an argument, but sort of bringing about the experience of that, sort of trying to go ahead.
Yes, also because my I sketch now how the number of 4 is put into my book, but it is also about, my book is also about the relation between philosophy at the one hand and madness at the other hand. And for me, there are 3 possible relations: that philosophy is different and there's a gap with madness, and that is more or less part one, where I show and where I argue that it is not psychology, that it is not psychiatry, but that it is philosophy that has the best means to say something about madness, because philosophy is a tradition where prejudices of the psychological theory are put aside. So that is so what a normal human being is. In philosophy, there is no normal human being. There's always questioning the common ground, questioning the common sense. So that's one line. Philosophy is the best means to say something about madness at the other hand. That's one line of my book. But the other line, what you are referring at, is that what I also experienced and what I describe in my book is that when you when you philosophize consequently, and you're grabbing off, you're digging into the ground, and you're making this and you're making that, then it is very well possible that you discover that there are rabbit holes all over the place. And that you, like in Alice in Wonderland, suddenly you are in a completely different world.
Mhm.
And well, what is the moment that Alice, how did she get into Wonderland? That that is the fall, by the way, but the fall into that rabbit hole. Well, it's only a metaphorical fall, but that is how I think about when you do too much philosophy, you may philosophize yourself and the whole world, and you can become mad
Mm.
with unclear whether that is satisfying or not. Because now I'm this whole our interview stresses. I stressed all times that it is kind of interesting story, but we must not forget that this crystal, this center, may also be a black hole, may
Yeah.
also be the horror, may also be the place where we do not want to be, to which we do every means to escape from it. That's also madness. So I don't want to romanticize
Yeah.
madness or psychosis at all. The same applies to God when we talk about the mysterium tremendosum. It God is not by definition good.
Yeah, that's a very important and honest point.
Yes.
And I think it's also one of the reasons why those of us who are, again, in this sort of field of mysticism are so drawn to the book, right? So there's both the sort of contagion of language, but there's
Mhm.
also that sort of like fullness and honesty about the mysterium tremendimus
Yes.
cosmos, right? The mystical isn't always nice. It's
No.
not always
Mhm.
lovely.
No.
Oftentimes it's terrifying,
Yes.
and that's something that we need to be more honest and forthcoming about.
Yes.
Um, so just so that's the sort of thing that I know that certain members in the audience will might not follow right away. So if we could we sort of look at the ways in which the sort of Via Mystica Psychotica seems to work similarly between a sort of mystical thinker of your choice and within madness, right? So something like you could choose any particular one, but the
Mhm.
one that really struck me was delanguization.
Yes.
Right. So we have this whole history of apophatic discourse, right, within
Mhm.
Christian mysticism,
Mhm.
monotheistic mysticism. But it's so interesting to see you sort of unpack that and describe the ways in which it works in madness. So if you could just give us a little taste of how you're putting those things in dialogue or putting them in comparison.
Ooh, that's a difficult.
Because I know
Yeah.
it's a big question, right? Hey, could you
Yeah,
describe
but it,
apophasis? Yeah.
yeah, that's indeed uh, the question. Um, there is a Saussurean connotation there as well, and also a kind of um, not a kind of destructuring of language, because to express certain things, some things cannot be expressed, and some things cannot be said. Um, yeah, I don't know what to say about that,
Yeah, that's okay.
this via linguistica, that is important. This
Yeah.
I also use the word scratch language.
Ooh, scratch language?
Scratch, like in Dutch, it would be krastaal, and then you only have to change the vowels, and it is kristal. So
Ah.
krastaal and kristal are related to each other, and I think that is something when you are ploying or when you are playing or employing with language. That's what we see all the time with when there's someone psychotic at your department or in the street or in your family. um, the conversations and the discussions, they do not follow the plan you think they would follow, because the psychotic person not only notes the implied message, but also notes the form of the message. And that can be a poetic form, and it
Mhm.
can be a metalingual form. And he or she starts to what they call freely associate
Mhm.
onto that form, but it is not like a random machine that has just gone wild, but it is loaded with a certain energy to deconstruct the language in order to find out what is left when we deconstruct all language. And that movement um, is also a movement we see in language itself. Like in the Semitic languages, we have these core of consonants, and we have vowels that give a certain flavor, a certain inflection to the core consonants. Uh,
Mm.
well,
Interesting. Yeah, the different ways of thinking and associating out of language, but through
yeah,
language that are in
yeah,
there, it is so fruitful for going back through historical texts as well. That's one of the
yes,
things that's really, really fun about it is that particular reading, if I remember right,
yes,
primarily
and
comes. Go ahead.
yes, and I must also say that that's a reason why I am so tremendously thankful that in the Arabic world they have also translated my book.
Ooh.
I can show it.
Oh, wow.
It's like this.
Yeah.
Yes, and in Arabic language things work differently
So,
because and at this very time a Chinese translation is being worked on, and that it should be published in the autumn somewhere.
mm.
And that makes me and others think about what is language, and what is the difference between spoken language and written language, and that's also very important.
So, as a linguist, do you take a more hands-on approach to the translations of your work? So, I know when we've talked before, you have
Yes,
familiarity with Arabic. So,
yes. Well, the English translation, it was an going to and back with the translator Nancy Forrest Vlier. We work together on ambiguities in the text, of course. She's from the United States, and she has been living in the Netherlands, has a Dutch background as well. So that was very fruitful discussion. In the Arabic translation, I only knew it would be translated into English, and bam, one day it was into Arabic.
oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Then and probably they translated it from the English edition.
Hmm.
Yeah, and And in the preface to the English edition, I make the joke that the Dutch edition is already a translation of something that
Mm.
cannot be said in language. So we are like in a circle around this holy grail of crystal somehow, and we write text, or we write text on the wall to know, or we complain at the wall because we cannot go through the wall, and we try to make the wall transparent and to see something, but we only see we do nothing, see nothing else than glass.
Mm.
That's or crystals in the glaciers.
Yeah.
So that's yeah,
That's one of the lovely things about the book is it's filled with these very sort of poetic turns of phrase or poetic
yeah,
images, turns of phrase. It's not just captured in denotative language. It's very
indeed,
illustrative. It's very
indeed,
evocative.
yes.
Um, so if you don't mind, I'd like to. There's a number. I mean, there's so many thinkers that you work with throughout the course of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to put a few on the table to
Mm-hmm.
see sort of how you ended up approaching them. Um, so, just being a historian of religions, I couldn't help but seeing Eliade pop up everywhere, both primarily his shamanism book and his yoga
Yes,
book, right? So,
yes,
what was
yes,
it
indeed.
that you found so fruitful about bringing Eliade into the conversation here?
I think it started with other books by him. Like he has written a book Two in One, which
Yeah,
as a title says very much
yeah,
about my whole book. And well, he was for me the first serious schooler that I read about comparative religion. So in when I had formed my thesis that within madness there is something sanctified, holy, or religious, or whatever you call it. I I do not come from a particular religious background, so I did not immediately run to the Quran or to the Bible, but I started to study comparative religion with Eliade. And then I saw, wow, that he had written a whole book on yoga and also on shamanism, and I plucked the fruits from those books indeed. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it could be the I think about shamanism. Much more can be said about shamanism and madness than I do in my book.
yeah.
That is that is for sure. But shamanism, um, that is such a thing used in so many different contexts that I would not want to. Well, I was shocked at what happened in the capital of the US
Oh,
in
are you referring to
2000.
the Q shaman?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah. There,
and
it's
then I thought, okay, no more talk about shamanism. This is something that, well, that so with yoga that is not so much the case. So I wrote some things about yoga, but I also used this Venezuelan who wrote about Tibetan Buddhism.
mhm.
That I thought also interesting, and that is also a link with an author I often come back to, Peter Kingsley,
Mm.
with his, yeah, his funny take on Jung and on Parmenides, etc. But I think he has very important points. I use Peter Kingsley also a lot,
Mhm.
but yeah, he is a bit hardened, so to say, and is withdrawn into the only wise guys, uh, the pre-Socratics, and then we had Parmenides, and then we had a bit Jung, and then we had Peter Kingsley himself, and well. But he says also very apt things, I think.
Yeah. So you're, I noticed he's everywhere in the book, and
Kingsley.
yeah, Kingsley. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, Catavolca, I don't think was out by this point, but
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
the Dark
Yeah.
Places of Madness, or sorry,
Yes.
Dark Place, yeah.
Dark Place of
Um,
Wisdom. Yes. And
Thank you. Sorry.
also is a reality book.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, he's prominent. Another one I wanted to talk about, Husserl.
Husserl.
Husserl,
Eh,
yeah, he
with
ends
the
up
H.
with the H. Yes,
Yeah. Not Russell, but Husserl. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
he's a mère à voir. He's yeah, Husserl's. I've used Husserl's thinking about time
Mhm.
in my water schedule in the part of water and then about time. So yes, I've studied also about time quite a lot, and that is my main entrance to phenomenology. Indeed, Husserl himself.
Yeah, one way I've approached your book, it's I gather it's a sub theme, but it's so much of the book is just about time, right?
Yes,
And these different ways of experiencing time, the objective
yes,
versus subjective, cosmic versus phenomenological, but also
yes,
the different sort of shadings of the phenomenological that comes out of madness,
yes,
that you're able to chart so beautifully. Yeah,
yes, yes. Yeah.
it feels
Mhm.
like a book to be reread for different themes throughout.
Yes, I
Um,
do as well. Yeah.
yeah. Let's see. Who else do I want to toss in here? Um, so you had read Plotinus before uh,
Mhm.
2007. So
Yes,
you're reading him just as sort of the Neoplatonic thinker, this sort of systematic approach to the one, et cetera, et cetera. And then
Mhm.
2007 happens. And is there like a clean break in how you read him, and now you read him more sort of experientially through this sort of una delusion as it gets translated as?
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
yes,
Um,
yes. That changes. That the way books have meaning for me changes. That is, yeah, that depends on situation, so to say. Yeah,
uh, so the
because when we talk about Deleuze, that that has changed very much for me. In 2007, I was psychotic, and later I have suffered from or have gone through another psychosis. And after that psychosis, I looked at logics of sense by Deleuze,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, indeed, that is what it is all about. We can number all those chapters, and we can say, well, that belongs there, that belongs there, and then I saw kind of not. I used Deleuze in the very beginning of my book,
Mhm.
a quote by Deleuze about seeing through the crystal.
Mm.
And then I say, well, now I see the crystal. Now I see it crystal clear and Hölderlin, etc., etc. But it was only after the psychosis that came after 2007 that I saw Deleuze, Deleuze, her or himself within a crystal castle. And then I saw the crystal castle from within with
Mm.
Deleuze. And that now I experience and read Deleuze completely differently than as an authoritative author, but as someone who gives recipes or jokes or, yeah.
Mm. Oh, that's interesting. Um, is it,
Also
so I've
Thomas
been,
Pynchon, by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
scene with Slothrop that comes about. It's in part two of your
Yeah.
book. Um, so that comes from Gravity's Rainbow. Are you
Yeah.
an avid Pynchon reader?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 'cause he has a new book coming out. So that's to keep
Who? Who?
Thomas Pynchon.
He has a new book?
Yeah, the new book's coming out shortly. It just has been floating around in those
Okay.
recommended suggested readings. Um,
Okay. Yeah. That's, well, yeah, that's
but
interesting.
he does capture this sort of psychological terrain quite well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the so this is you published in Dutch at least a Philosophy of Madness 2014, right? And it
Yes.
won it won awards, and then it was published into English in 2020. I have my own sense of what the reception has been like among sort of intellectuals in my field, but how has the experience been like for you in terms of its reception? Who have you received a lot of emails? Have you been
Yeah.
invited to to give lots of talks? What has
Yes.
it been like to sort of put this out into the world and start to get the feedback?
That has been very very nice and warm, and yeah, grateful I'm for that. That since 2014, indeed. Um, yeah, I gave many lectures in mental health care situations,
Mm.
because that is a very important application ground, so to say. That my book, and also people who say that they recognize something in my book, often they recognize that then they do not say it is true or not true, like some philosophers or psychiatrists themselves would say, but they recognize something. And those are my peer psychotic patients, so to say.
Yeah.
And those patients, but also the psychiatrists. Yeah, I gave in the Netherlands, it had a quite huge, it has been sold well.
Mm.
It had four print runs for such a thick book. That is quite wondrous.
Yeah.
And with this Philosophy of Madness book in Dutch, I also won again the prize for the best Dutch book in philosophy in 2015. It was, and so I went to the all kinds of local libraries, philosophy debate clubs, all kinds of settings where people were interested in the word and the words that denied the word, so to say,
Mm.
and all kinds of, yeah, well, we had a good time.
Yeah. Uh,
And with 2021, because that was between 2014, 2015, I believe, until 2021, it was only in Dutch.
uh,
So the I didn't stretch further than a half of Belgium, so to say. And when the English edition came out, then I suddenly got emails from all over the world, from Europe, from the United States, from Latin America, from India, Australia, etc.
Yeah, and is it similar in that it's sort of mental health professionals and then those who sort of see themselves or see others within it? And of course, we as religion scholars who reach out, because I know you've also been in touch with like
Yeah,
Jeff Kripal. Yeah.
yeah, with religious scholars, often I have. Yeah, sometimes a bit. Now, not with the scholars, I have no problems, but the representatives of a particular religion, because in the Netherlands, healthcare is organized in different kinds of pastoral care.
Hmm.
Pastoral care according to the Catholic tradition, pastoral care according to the Hindu tradition, to the Islamic tradition. So religion is has a clear form. And when I give a presentation and there are not religious scholars but pastoral care givers in the room, they think that I am eating the bread that they should eat, so to say. And that
Hmm.
I spoil the massas with not the good message, not the Eucharisty, but with the bad message, and that I'm not, yeah, that I'm not religious and that I mock religion. That is a kind of
Hmm.
tension.
I mean, that is a danger that anyone who is speaking to the mystical or the religious is going to
Yeah,
confront in a
yeah,
certain way. But I mean, there's so many scholars and thinkers who would be on your side with it as
yeah, yeah, yeah,
well. And I
yeah.
mean, also Boyson comes up. I am terrible at pronouncing things, by the way.
Boysan,
But
yes,
yeah, he's
absolutely.
everywhere in your book as
Yes, yes,
well.
he's also
And
in
I
the
mean,
end.
talk
Yes.
about pastoral care and chaplaincy,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he was a sort of pioneer in
yeah,
this way.
yeah. He's terrific. He's terrific. And um, well, the in the Netherlands, someone wrote a PhD, a doctoral dissertation, a Cor Arends, about this Anthony Boysan from
Mm,
a religious perspective. And I read his dissertation and I read Boysan, and I thought, well, that's okay.
mm,
So I used that. But this Cor Arends, well, I don't want to gossip about Cor or to gossip about, but Cor Arends and me have a kind of tension because he feels responsible for the sheep who
yeah.
are in his church. And when I poke it up and I say religion is not only in the church, it's not only in the books, there's not a clear difference between the transcendent and the what you call it, the earthly life, when there are all kinds of interactions and interferences, the flock of sheep could become confused, according to Cor Arends.
Mm.
So we have to be careful with the fire, so to say,
Yeah.
with the hearth.
So that makes me, or that prompts me to ask. It's a very basic question, but it's
Mm,
the one that I've been asked when I've taught the book, and it would be good to hear you reflect on it. Although you've sort of started here, so parts two and three sort of explore paths and destinations within the mystical and the
yeah.
mystical madness, mad mysticism. Um, do you if any, what distinctions do you mark off between the mystical and the mad? So is it are these sort of, sorry, let me get my terms right here. Um, would you see it as a matter of nomenclature? Just we're using one term or the other. Would you see it as
Yeah,
a matter of fruits, to use the James
yeah.
term? Is it fruits and outcomes? Is madness more leads to more breaking apart than coming together?
Mhm.
Or is it somehow fundamentally different?
Yeah, well, I write exactly about that point in the introduction to part two, the Via Mystica Psychotica, and then I discuss it with a certain Caroline Bart
Mhm.
and with some others. And I really don't know because there are quite a lot of people who have been psychotic who indeed say, well, there was something in my psychosis. It had something to do with spirits, with the spiritual, or the voices I heard, they have some reality, and etc. So for some, is indeed mysticism and madness quite close to each other. Um, but yeah, I can you when you look back at your own experiences, then you look back to those experiences, but you are also looking back from a certain position to your experiences, and then from later you can discover that the periods you had always thought, well, that was so stupid what I did. I'm glad that I know nothing anymore about it. That was psychotic, but you can reinterpret your history or your own history, and then find out that what you went through, and you re-experience it. You bring new language to the field, and you compare it with with my descriptions or with any other description of things that may happen, and you can come up with a story that is clad in the clothes of mysticism. Why not? If And also the other way around. You can think, well, I've talked a lot about mysticism, but when nobody wants to hear it, I can keep it to myself. I write it in my diary. But well, it was just a psychosis. My brain was just a bit. I got too much dopamine at that time. So I think it. Well, so in a way, I do indeed think it is a question of nomenclatura,
Mhm.
which does not mean that it is an unimportant question. It is an important question, but then we should to further delve it out. We should talk about how do we do the nomenclatura?
Yeah.
Who gives the names?
Yeah, and that's what one of the things that's so generative about the book is just putting these things side by side,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And putting these accounts from sort of phenomenological psychiatry or your own accounts
yeah, mm-hmm.
right next to sort of paradigmatic mystical authors.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you do that enough, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's why everyone asks the question is because the similarities are so striking
Mm-hmm.
that then they walk away with it like, well, is there? What is the distinction? Is there a distinction? I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
bit lost, which is especially true if you're a sort of
Yeah,
divinity school student, right? Sort of
yeah,
speaking
yeah.
to, but it's very
And the difficult
refreshing. Go ahead.
yeah, the difficult thing is also when you zoom in onto all these mysticisms. There's not only one
Oh
kind
yeah.
of mysticism, and well, um, yeah, when I would have to have a favorite author, it would be Gershon Scholem
Oh, okay. Nice.
with his description also about nihilist mysticism.
Mm,
That's I think that's this kind of yeah, because well, nihilism is also a kind of way of thought, but also a trap,
mm,
which also runs through my whole book. Nihilism or skepticism against all given truths,
mm,
and that can be a quite nasty sting when you are in this rabbit hole, that you are turning your madness to yourself and that you're stinging yourself.
mm. Uh, so as we start to come in for a landing, we spoke offline, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't let you go without talking about it. So, a former guest of the show, also my PhD advisor, Jeff Kripal, has reached out to you, and
Yeah.
you remarked how it wasn't until what happened in 2020, a sort of more
Mm-hmm.
recent psychosis, that all of a sudden Jeff's books start to click. Right. So could you describe that? Because I think one, Jeff will be flattered to hear that in many ways, but also what it
Yeah.
was about that sort of turned those books so that they were illuminated in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was indeed. I knew Jeffrey Kripal. I think I have a quote from him already in my book, in
Hmm.
Philosophy of Madness. Somewhere a kind of quote about how you could define mysticism.
Okay.
So I already knew his articles of some of his work, but it was indeed only very lately after he had reached out to me that there was becoming a kind of click, and this click was that I suddenly went through a period in which it became clear to me that when we have various words for knowing, we have the Greek noesis, but that the Greek root of gnosis and Gnosticism
Hmm.
says much more about my whole book than I realized before I had met Jeffrey Kripal. So for my last rewritings in my head of a philosophy of madness, Jeffrey Kripal is key figure. he has supported me by writing now and then an email, um, and that was what kept me going in a way, that my serpentine intuition was not off the road, so to say. That's why I love the work of Kripal.
Yeah, would in a way, those of us who have read him a lot and were trained by him, this book could not fit that training more perfectly. In a certain
Mm,
way, it fills this certain the issue of relating madness psychosis to these sort of dramatic experiences, but
yeah, yeah.
through modes of knowing. That's the thing,
Hmm.
and that's the
Hmm.
thing that you're putting your finger on there.
Hmm.
Um, this book does that with aplomb. So, as a sort of last question, the A Philosophy of Madness came out, 11 years ago in Dutch.
Yeah.
So that's a long time. What are you working on now? Well, how has that? How have your
Um,
writing or your research, how has it evolved into something else at this point?
yeah. Well, I have written in between a philosophy of madness and my today's situation. I've written another book,
Ooh.
and that's called Shock Effects: Philosophizing in Times of Climate Change. And that is quite different. But the last couple of months, I see the connection between them. In that book, I also use crystal, but then I use the crystal earth, and then I write about where energy comes from and how it gets spoiled in a way that it is used in a way that it is used against human and other life forms on planet Earth.
Mm.
But that is a kind of intermittent book. And today, well, I sent you my article, I think,
Hmm.
about the bad
Denizens of the Dark, the
deviations in the dark. Yes,
deviations. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Was that an
I'm
essay that you wrote on your own, or was that solicited?
I wrote it on my own.
Mhm.
It was asked for by uh, 2 years ago, whether I wanted to write a piece about things with madness, things with philosophy. And then I came up with this for a book that has never come yet. So I had this text in Dutch, and then I translated it into English first, computer translation, and then the last couple of months I have now and then gone back to this text, and there's a lot in it that has not been worked out yet, because what we haven't discussed so far, or perhaps we have, is we have discussed all kinds of binaries of dual constructions,
Mhm.
uh, the two in one, etc. But one thing, what really makes all this stuff really important, is the difference between peace and war, so to say,
Mm.
between polemos and pais. And um, yeah,
How
that
so? So
yeah,
to
so far.
unpack, yeah. So how is your more recent work sort of exploring that beyond a binary between peace and war?
Yeah, by writing the piece I sent you,
Hmm.
by examining some poets like Stéphane Mallarmé,
Mm.
um, and by just living and seeing what happens and commenting on it in these new articles. I consider what I sent to you, the bad, the refugee, the visionary. as a kind of new kind of text after Philosophy of Madness. And so I have a couple of other of those new kinds of texts.
Mm.
But
And you,
that is in development. I am in fact working with a researcher from Belgium, with whom I've done lots of research. And what is interesting for you and everyone who would see this show is that these kind of investigations into madness, into philosophy and madness, we have a kind of network in Belgium that we run. And every 1.5 years, we have a conference.
mm,
And students can send their papers, and there are 4 parallel sessions. It's 2 days. And there we discuss more about these things, and people can join it.
what was that
And
called again? Sorry.
too mad to be true
Mm,
in Ghent.
in Ghent. Okay. So this is I didn't have this question prepared, but it popped in my head as you're talking about this conference. And so uh, your work is really pioneering in a sense, this exploration of philosophy and madness, or at least it's sort of like
Mhm.
the main voice in that. It's happening at the same time as the psychedelic renaissance is happening, right? So
Yeah,
do you get a
yeah,
lot of questions about how does what you do relate
yeah,
to this sort of new exploration of psychedelics or no?
yeah, yeah. Well, indeed, when sometimes I say when people ask in the public when there's an audience and they say they want to know what madness or psychosis is, then I often say, well, you just use LSD or mescaline or another kind of stuff. Um, and then I say jokingly, but still true, but you might also read my book
Like at the same time?
at the same
Or,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I think those are two very sort of perfect ways of sort of encapsulating this experience of psychosis, your book and LSD.
Mhm.
So if you
Yeah,
put them together, that might
yeah,
be intense, but
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Indeed.
but yeah, no, that's interesting. All right. So I think we can come in for a landing. I've taken up
Mhm.
plenty of your time, but thank you so much
Yeah,
for your
yeah.
thoughts
Mhm.
and your sort of reflections on this
Mhm.
wonderful, wonderful book.
Yeah, well, the pleasure was mine as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Take care.